Before we hop into this episode, I have one favor to ask of you. Over 95% of the people that tune into this podcast are not yet subscribed. And whether it's your first time here or you are a regular listener of the show, I just ask that you hit that button. We've grown over 880% this past year, and I know we are destined to impact so many people in this year of 2025. And the way we're going to do that is by you hitting that subscribe button, you sharing it with a friend that you think will get value from the show, you leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you leave a comment, a like on this post, and that you get it out to more people, because that is the way we're going to impact more and more people. And the way that I'm going to return the favor to you is by getting more and more guests on the show to help you expand your mind, question your beliefs, and really help you open your mind up to how good this life can really get. And I'm going to do that by having interviews and conversations with exceptional people. And it's just going to get better and better. And I hope that you stick along for the journey and then you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Let's hop into the interview. 2019, you exited 76 companies for $1.2 billion. And I've heard you speak about how money doesn't change you. It just reveals yourself to yourself. What has money from that experience and from all your other ones really revealed to you about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. And I've said that so many times because that is my basic belief system, is that money is the ultimate revealer. Whatever is inside ultimately just comes out in a greater fashion when you ultimately exponentially increase your output. And typically that's capital. But for me, it's really turned into a life of giving. I think I grew up in a house where my parents were very giving. And so when, I had a lot of success and had the capital I wanted, I really didn't focus on building more businesses. I focused on giving more away. And so I started my nonprofit in 2013. And now that's the focus of even the current companies that I'm building, is just to figure out ways to give more away.
As you've given more away, have you noticed that more has come in almost not even
There's
noticing it?
Yeah, there's a principle that the more you give, the more that comes back to you. I think in life, we're truly just a conduit. We're a conduit of the things that we've been taught, a conduit of things that have been sown into us. But we're also a conduit when it comes to resources. I find that the more I sow into others, the more I gain, whether it's my time or it's the money. But yes, absolutely. It's a principle that you can't deny. And if you look at my hourly output, my capital output, my everything, it's like everything, as I've given more away, more returns to me.
Yeah, I've heard you speak about how your annual review, it just turned 2025, so it's a big year to think about what are you spending time on. And your dad seemed to be a big person for you to help you realize the value of time when you sold your first business, and really helped you realize that. How has your perspective of time evolved over time?
Yeah, time is our most valuable asset, and people say that, but they don't live by that. Oftentimes we spend more time managing our money than we do managing our time. And I'll tell you that to the degree that you manage your time, it ultimately gives you more money. Money is always the output of your time. You will be rewarded for how you manage your time. So for me, it's just a constant pursuit of that. I'm a little crazy when it comes to time management. I measure almost every minute of every day based on what I'm putting in. I give that amount of time. I use an app to do that. And then I make sure that whatever I spend my time on, I look at what the output of that time was. And so I always have at the end of the year, and I haven't done it yet for 2024 yet, but within the next couple of weeks, I will. My CFO gets all of my time broken down, and then he has to associate the dollar output of that, so that I know by hour, by minute, by day, how much my time costs, what the value of it is. And so I've been on this quest for the past maybe 8 to 10 years of just trying to increase the value of my time. And the way that I do that is just by focusing on the incremental uses of my time. Most people, as they go through their day, they're flipping with their time. It's like, do you have a minute? Sure, come on in. Well, for me, it's like every 15 minutes is measured. Most of my meetings throughout the day, as I govern my executives, are in 15-minute increments. There are staff members that are very high level that give 15 minutes with me a week. And as you focus on time, then you begin to fill up time properly. So when my executives come in with a 15-minute meeting, there's really no, how are you? How was your weekend? How are your children? It's, I know I've got this time. This is what I'm going to use it for. Let's go. And so in doing so, then I also will allow myself time to connect with people. So I just have very intentional uses of my time, and with that comes the ability to gain more wealth through that time.
Yeah, yeah. Time is the ultimate asset, it seems, in so
Mhm.
many ways. And it's really incredible to hear you say that because I just started going to a new gym. It's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes closer. And that
Sure.
little time of not going through traffic has saved me so much time every single day, every single week, every single month. And
Right.
I'm curious, from earlier on in your career to now, is there something that you used to give more time to that you no longer value?
Yeah. You know, I used to give a lot of time to many things, and I think every single year, as I'm looking through, what I've spent my time on, if you're calculating that time, it's easy to look at it in the macro and say, where did I spend the most time? Where could I cut down, and where could I better use it? And so I used to give a lot of time to things that were more, I would say, curiosity driven versus intent. So I'm very, in everything I do, I get super deep. So like my love of coffee turned into building a big coffee empire. Whatever it is, cars, it's like I'm all in. And so if you talk to me about anything in my life, I get super, super deep and I'll tell you every spec and everything about it. Just the nature of how I think and how my brain works. But I would allow that to go into just random curiosities, and then I wouldn't make a correlation back to it serving me.
Mm,
So one year I remember I was really fascinated with our presidents, and I wanted to learn everything about our presidents. And so I read like all these things about presidents, and I watched all these documentaries. And while it served me, it was good information. It really had no output or value connected to it. And so instead of just allowing myself to go into like these deep rabbit holes of thinking or learning, I want to make sure that they're tied to what I'm doing as far as my output, my greater goal. So like right now, I'll give you another for instance. I think there's a massive correlation between going to war and building a business. And so what I've been fascinated over with the past maybe 3 or 4 months is really kind of that concept of war, like the preparation for war. And while I think that there are a lot of correlations, today's business environment is very different from war. There's a lot more collaboration. It's not about defeating your customer. It's about winning your customer over. It's not about defeating your competition. It's about understanding them and innovating and collaborating with them. And so, it's like I've been on this deep dive of studying war tactics, war generals, things like that. But it's because I believe that there's a deficiency in how I start up companies. In my mind, I
mm.
think that there's this thing I can learn for how people prepare for war and how you actually start a company. So it's like because it correlates, I allow myself to go deep within it. So yeah, I've given myself my time to a lot of things that don't matter in life, but now I'm just trying to be more intentional about those deep dives that I take.
Yeah, I think the intentionality is huge. Like when people ask me for a book recommendation or something in that sense, I usually ask them, "What skill are you trying to acquire, or what problem are you looking to overcome?" I can't just give you I can give
Sure.
you a bunch of different books. So like, but being intentional about it is what's really important. And
Yeah.
I think you still have to be able to carve out time. I mean, for the leverage that you've been able to build over time to be able to manage and hold on to so many different companies and do so many different things. How do you carve out that time? What does your I guess your process for learning even look like?
Yeah. So I break my time down into 4 different quadrants throughout the day. And for me, there's a self-development time that I'm always setting side time for. But that self-development is really still tied to my greater goal, my greater purpose. While I maximize my time by going to the gym on a daily basis, I always, every house I have, I put a gym in it because again, I don't want to waste
Hmm.
15 to 20 minutes driving to and from the gym. I want to be able to hop in the shower. When I'm done, I want to get ready. I want to go. And so it's like I make sure, but in that self development time, I'm multitasking, right? So I'm listening to podcasts based on what I want. Like this morning in the gym, I'm listening to a podcast specific to war.
Hmm.
I'm listening to this guy teach on this general. And so I'm really multitasking, and I'm carving that time out, and then I give myself to new things all the time where I want to be the student, not always the teacher. As you have a $1 billion exit, oftentimes you're just kind of like propelled to like, okay, teach us.
Hmm.
Well, that's great, but always teaching from an empty cup doesn't work either. So I find myself, I still attend some masterminds. I still go to conferences. This year I went to an AI conference. I'm super fascinated with AI and what it can do for my businesses, the various businesses I have. And so I still want to make sure that in that self-development time, I'm not the teacher, I'm the student. And so I have to be very careful not to do that, because so many people pull for me and they want, something from you. They want you to teach them something you've learned. But I always carve that out. About 30% of my weekly activity is tied to personal and self-development.
Mm. I think it's important to never stop learning, of course, and it's awesome to hear from your perspective as well, because a lot of people would see. I think a lot of people put people on pedestals, and they don't understand that there's never really an ending to it. Like the purpose of life is to continue. It's like the striving. It's not the actual achievement. Did you have to achieve to realize that, or when did that
Absolutely.
be apparent to
Yeah,
you?
for sure. Until my mid 20s, I was always climbing the mountaintop, looking, and as soon as I get close to the top of that peak, I'd find another peak that was higher, and then I would just abandon that climb for the next one. And it became this like kind of vicious cycle. And I think a lot of people get into it. And that next peak can be a car, it can be a house, it can be a vacation, it can be a business. It really can be anything. And I found myself really being achievement focused in my early 20s. Um, I sold a company, and the story goes, I felt like I had achieved everything everyone around me felt like was success, but then I was extremely empty. And it just didn't click. It was like, well, why do I feel so empty, yet there isn't one person that wouldn't look at me and say I'm successful? So like there's something off. Like, and I think what I realized is my measurement of success was off. Like my measurement of success was tied to what everyone else believed success was, but it wasn't a true measurement of what I was fulfilled in when it came to success. And so what I realized, during that kind of growth journey is that, to your point, it's more about the pursuit rather than the achievement itself. And then I'll say that the pursuit gets even more rewarding or more fulfilling if you're helping others in that pursuit. So for me, the reason I named my nonprofit Impact Others is because I realized that fulfillment really wasn't about elevating Eddie. Fulfillment was about elevating everyone else as Eddie was pursuing whatever I was pursuing. And that's the fulfillment I found in my life, is just taking others on the journey with me.
Yeah, it's the ultimate failure is achieving success and without meaning, without kind of feeling like you're actually having a purpose in the world. And I think it's really amazing to hear people like you in your situation say things like that, because it gives people a sense of hope. I think I've heard you say that your two times that you've had depression is when you sold your first company and then when you sold like the 76 of them.
Mhm.
So where was your head at in that moment? Like take me through your internal dialogue to really understand like where your head was at.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a question that people need to ask themselves before they ever get to the mountaintop.
Yeah.
Asking yourself the questions out, the internal dialogue you're talking about, when you're on the mountaintop is it's so much more detrimental, because you realize you've already created a game that is rigged against you. I had really essentially, the internal dialogue was, well, who is Eddie Wilson if he doesn't have this attachment to these companies?
Mhm.
Because the companies, what I was really trying to figure out was, how do I find fulfillment? And I was gaining fulfillment in helping others. And all of a sudden I look at this achievement. The next achievement is sell these companies for $1 billion. But my name, my time, my connections, my relationships were all tied to that. My identity was tied to it. All the thousands of employees that worked for me, I was tied to them. And so I was really at this crossing point where I was like, well, success is selling it, having the exit, being able to take, my time back and contribute to things I want. And then, then in doing so, it's like, and you lose everything that you have some sense of fulfillment and value in. And so I think it's getting to the place of really understanding what our true value is, where our true value lies, and not tying ourselves to the identity of a company or a group of people or the output of our lives. Our identity has to be stronger than that. And then in our identity, as we produce those things can't ultimately replace that inner sense of peace and purpose and value, or else you always find yourself in this kind of nasty, vicious loop. So that's the internal dialogue that I went through when I was selling those companies. And today I have 23 companies again. We're on a massive tear again, but my value is really tied into who I am, what I do for others, how I'm serving and showing up for others on a daily basis. And so if my company here grows to 5 billion or it stays at 500 million, it's like I'm okay with that, and I'm not going to be identified by the outputs of my lives, like. And what's interesting about that is today, Andrew, my partner, and I, we have the Aspire Tour. It's the world's largest business tour. We have the Aspire for More Mastermind, world's largest mastermind today. We're massively growing, going crazy. I've built this coffee company, one of the fastest growing coffee companies in the Southeast. And it's funny because now that my identity is not tied to any of these things, it seems like those things are creating identity in and of themselves that I'm not holding back because it's not dependent on me.
That's what you'd want, right? Like where you are significant, but you're not the main source that everyone is looking to for all the problems that are going on. And yeah, I think it's ego is something that's really difficult, especially when you're achieving those things. I mean, it's cool to see you too, because I just saw a video of yours a few days ago. You just got amazing color on the Lambo, by the way. And then coffee companies, like stuff like that. Like I love coffee. I travel to go experience coffee from different places. So I'm gonna have to try yours. And just like still valuing those things, but coming from a different perspective and not attaching your self-worth to this thing or saying that I need this to be enough. So your relationship has changed with that, which is really awesome to see. But everything that you want is on the other side of your ego, is something that I've heard you say. I'm curious, how has your ego worked for you, yet also against you? Because it can be something that works for you.
Yeah, I would just say that I don't think that ego is always bad, but I do believe that everything that I want is on the other side of my ego, the ability to tame it, understand it, use it for for a greater sense of purpose. Ego is really, if you read Ryan Holiday's book, which I'm a huge fan of, it's called Ego is the Enemy.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, he says that ego is just an unhealthy belief in oneself or one's abilities. I read a lot of Marcus Aurelius, and, he talks a lot about the ego. And I think in my early days, it was the unhealthy belief in oneself that caused me to actually try to achieve something that I had never achieved before. Well, that's not necessarily bad, right? It's the posturing in those moments that are bad. When I can't allow myself to learn because I have now bought into this lie that I am bigger, greater, better than the situation I'm in. And so, there's a constant battle where it's like, is it ego or is it confidence? Confidence is where I really want to root myself in. Confidence is in I have had some success, therefore I will have more success. I have achieved these things and figured out these problems, therefore I'll figure out my next problems, achieve the next things. Confidence is rooted in something that you've already experienced. Ego is rooted into something that isn't real and that there is a lack of experience. So I try to make sure that I'm pushing back into confidence. I still am today trying to achieve things I've never achieved before. Like I'm still attempting things that I still have never attempted. So it's not necessarily ego as long as it's based in the belief of something that I've done in the past. One of my big rules, I'm a huge Tim Grover fan. Tim Grover wrote the book Winning, Relentless, amazing man, coached Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade. And Tim and I've had a lot of conversations, and I really subscribe to his level of thinking. And he says that if you can hire winners, then they ultimately have confidence rather than ego. And he was like, so when you're interviewing people, tie back into a moment where they've won anything. It doesn't matter if it's a third grade spelling bee, if they won their little league championship, they won a game, they hit a home run in T-ball. Figure out some piece of the person's psyche to determine, can they anchor back into something that they've had success in before? Because if they can, then they can translate that from a place of confidence, not from a place of ego. And I love that, because if you're developing someone from a place of winning to the next, ultimate success, then you can foster confidence, not ego.
I really like that perspective. I think it's for anyone to achieve what you've achieved or anything close to that. I think you have to have some aspect of delusional optimism in a sense to
Mhm.
where because no one can fathom you creating it. Like you couldn't have predicted it. No one could say that this is going to happen. And so you have to think bigger than anyone is thinking. And you probably looked like you were crazy in the beginning. I mean, your first was you sold your first company to Fox, I believe.
Yeah, I sold a television program. Yep.
Yeah. And so from that experience, because I don't even think you were trying to sell it from the beginning, right? I mean, it just kind of happened. Like, how did that open up your mind to what was possible?
Again, it goes back to one success breeds more
Yeah.
success. I love the person of Elon Musk. Like Elon is the most interesting human to kind of study because if you look at Elon, Elon's not building Tesla because he's trying to upset the car industry.
Mhm.
Elon started off in building Tesla because he believed that we should fundamentally change the way we get from point A to point B, and that he doesn't care if it's point A, the Earth, and point B, Mars. Like it doesn't matter to him. It's about travel. It's about transportation, and he's solving a problem. He's dreaming. But if Elon doesn't have all the success he had prior to Tesla, I don't know that Elon builds Tesla the way he's currently building it. He's building it with reckless abandon. When everyone told him, like all the big giants, in 2018 said, this guy's a fly by night. This will never happen. Ford. I mean, even the Asian car manufacturers, Toyota is like, this guy, it won't happen. They can't do it. You can't just build a car manufacturing company now. And he went with it with what you talked about, delusional optimism. But that delusional optimism, I think, is still tied to a level of confidence based
Yeah.
on a prior success. So I always tell the young guys and the young girls in my office, like, find success today in whatever you're doing, because the success, if you skip steps of success, because you're always trying to achieve the next success, like at some point you have to perform today. If you don't
Mhm.
perform today, tomorrow will be your success will dwindle, because a lot of times that delusional optimism is tied to yesterday's success, which
Right.
is breeds confidence that gets you to think like, oh, maybe I can do this. For me, that's what happened in my life. It wasn't like I set out to sell companies for $1 billion. I literally got taken advantage of on my first sale and said, I got to figure this out. And because I had success, whether it was in basketball or whatever it was early in my life, then I believed like I can figure this out. Like if these guys across the table from me can figure it out, I can figure it out. And so I'm going to master this game of buying and selling companies because I'm not getting taken advantage of anymore. Well, then I, become the king of exits because I master that game. It was the delusional optimism of I can be as good as these Wall Street guys, like I can figure this out. But it was tied into yesterday's success. It was tied into whatever was in my psyche and in my subconscious that happened successfully in my life, in the earlier days.
It's incredible. I'm guessing that your parents, because they were both entrepreneurs, gave you a lot of belief without even really knowing it, kind of indirectly, because it seemed like your dad was still risk averse in a sense.
Yeah.
What were some of the indirect lessons you learned from your parents early on that maybe you didn't even notice in the time?
hmm Yeah, I think that the greatest gift my parents gave me two great gifts. My mom gave me the gift of gratitude. My mom taught me that in the worst situations in life, if you can find gratitude, it's a catalyst for success. I was taken advantage of by that first exit in my companies. I didn't sit there and sulk because I was so trained to find gratitude in the worst situations in life. I started thinking, well, what good is coming out of this? And I anchored into that and moved forward. So my mom taught me gratitude. My dad taught me how to deal with fear. While my dad is risk adverse, he dealt with fear properly in that he stepped out and followed his dreams. I watched my father go from a decent job into entrepreneurship, left kind of his W-2 job, went into entrepreneurship. I watched us, as a family go from nothing to success, having, everything we needed. And then I watched my dad give back. And so like my dad was just a great template, but he helped me deal with fear properly. So today, as I go about it, I always have my experience in life to anchor back into. I always think, well, what's the worst that can happen? I lose everything and I go back to where I was as a child with my
Yes.
dad, where I got to spend time with him. Like he was building a business from nothing. Like, while I've never had as little as he had, I'm not afraid of it because I watched him navigate it. And so I always say, I think the greatest gift a parent can give their children is to chase their dreams. My dad wasn't at every single football game, every single baseball game, every single basketball game, every single whatever it was I decided to do in my life. He was there in the important days. He asked me, which ones do you want me to be a part of? And he made sure to be there in the important days. But my father was chasing his dreams. Like, he was building his companies. He was building real estate. He was doing the things that he believed brought success to his family. Watching my dad chase his dream helped me understand how to deal with fear. And most entrepreneurs really struggle with the concept of how to overcome the fear to step into what they're really called and created to do.
It's so true. And I think it's amazing to have a role model for someone to help you realize the value of having a purpose in this world, having meaning, striving towards something. Because if you don't, like, the idea of retirement has never really made sense to me, because the purpose of life is to do things, like to put stuff into the world and to have an impact. And so obviously, like, why would you ever really want that to end at the end of the day? And yeah, it's really, I'm curious, because fear is one of the things that is usually the driver behind most people's decisions. Probably unconsciously a lot of the time, but how do you make decisions? Do you have a process for making decisions?
Yes. We have two great emotions in the human body and human experience. It's either fear or love, where I really kind of get to a place of, if I'm resisting something, fear is running from something, love is running to something. It's the pursuit of something. Oftentimes in my decision-making process, I'll go through kind of a step of, what am I avoiding or what am I pursuing? If I use those phrases in my life and in my decision making, it brings things out of the subconscious and into the conscious mind, where I'm no longer, it's like, okay, I'm gonna buy this company, not buy this company, right? And it's like, and naturally in the subconscious, we start, like, just our subconscious just starts working, right? And I'll have a negative feeling or a positive feeling, and then I'll ask myself, before I'm to the point of, like, actually, like, signing documents, moving forward, am I pursuing something? Like, is this on the way of a pursuit? Is this helping me achieve something? Or am I just avoiding something? Am I fearful of something? Am I trying to prevent something in my life? And I make a lot of the big decisions by just asking myself those questions, because love-based actions always take us in the right direction. It doesn't always bring success, but it takes us in the right direction, or in the direction of success. Fear oftentimes prevents us, or it takes us off course to the success that we desire. And so in checking my motives and bringing the subconscious into the conscious, I can then make a conscious choice to always choose a love-based or a pursuit-based action.
Yeah, that's incredible. I heard you say a quote once that what I believe about myself is always not true. And this is something I've said to so many people so many times. Like, one of the videos on my Instagram, the one that has most views, probably like 300,000 at this point, it's literally saying exactly that. Like, what you see about yourself is not always true, because at the end of the day, it's always really a story. And you can't really tell that story because you're living out the story. And so you need someone else to be that person to you, to help you kind of realize that. Who was that for you, and how did you start to realize that?
Yeah, it's a life-changing experience to take what you believe about yourself and set it on the shelf and realize it's just not true. It's I am not the sum of my beliefs of myself, because sometimes they can be overinflated and
Right.
sometimes they can be underinflated. And there's a lot of people that have helped me along that journey. One recent one was a guy that we have on the Aspire stage. His name is Tim Story. Tim Story is he's a life coach to the stars. The guy has coached everybody, the Kardashians. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. The guy is incredible. And one thing that's really accelerated my my speaking, and so my kind of like national speaking and stage presence and things like that, is I would always go on the stage with, I would always say to myself, it really doesn't matter what you think about yourself. Focus on the content, deliver the content, because the content is what's going to change someone's life. Tim was like, time out. Like, because he would ask me, he'd watch me go through these rituals before I'd go on stage and give a keynote or whatever. And he would ask me, like, what's the inner dialogue in your head before you walk out on stage? And I told him that. He was like, that's horrible. He was like, why would you do that? He goes, you're literally diminishing who you are before you walk on and try to present yourself. He said, most people will only receive the content based on who you are. The packaging is everything, you know? And I was like, I hate that, you know, like, because now I don't want to focus on the packaging. I just want to focus on the content.
Mhm.
He's like, no, you have to take the ego out of that. And so again, you know, Tim was like saying, he was like, is what you're saying true? Yes. Okay, then why can't you be a good representation of that truth? So instead of telling yourself, I'm great, I'm awesome, this is good, you know, I'm exactly what these people need, or I'm not good, I'm horrible, I'm just gonna have to do my best, I'm just gonna try to provide value. He was like, cut out both sides and say, is what I'm saying truth? Am I a good representation of truth? And he was like, walk in truth. He was like, you know, so like this concept, perfect love cast out fear, right? This is kind of like a biblical concept.
Mhm.
Imperfect love is truth. Truth and perfect love are synonymous. And so in that, if I'll walk in truth, then fear kind of dissipates, but also ego dissipates. And
Right.
so what I'm in this constant pursuit of is walking in truth, which is really removing what I believe good about myself and removing what I believe bad about myself, and just allowing who I am to show through, and allow the things that I've accomplished and the pursuits that I'm after to just be who I am, you know? And there's a centeredness in that that allows me to actually have way more influence in life if I just allow myself and allow the truth of who I am to permeate, both good and bad, without trying to regulate it or trying to create it.
Wow. Yeah. Because regulating it, trying to think of the good or thinking of the bad is ego
Mhm.
based in both. So rather, so it doesn't matter. It's all based around ego.
Mhm.
That's a really big insight. And I know that for you, it took a while. I think Grant Cardone was a person to kind of push you into getting on social media to begin with. And I'm so glad you did. You're obviously impacting so many more people because of it. How was that experience jumping into getting into like social media, going on podcasts and starting your own and doing so many things, speaking on stages? That's a big skill to learn, to say the least, but also when you're trying to push it away for so long because you didn't really see the value in it, how did that really change your life?
That changed everything, for the good, and it also has had some bad, some negative.
Yeah.
Because I think that oftentimes it goes back to what we just talked about. Most people are so worried about the packaging on social media because people, it's like you have to have an elevated, you know, persona of who you are so that
Yeah.
people anchor into your message. And I just decided in the beginning that I was just going to be authentic, and whatever is real, and whatever is not is not. And if people follow, great. If they don't follow, great. That's hard because my team, you know, I have a team that essentially wants to elevate everything I do, make it look
Hmm.
grandiose, make it look amazing. And I just, you know, I refuse to do that. You know, like I just am not, I don't want to take, you know, like I'll post stuff with my cars periodically. I'll, you know, I live a life that's very blessed, and, you know, I have an amazing life, but I don't want, what I want is for people to understand the principles give you that life. So it's like you have to show enough of the life that people want to anchor into the principles. But I want to hyper focus on the principles that got me there, not the life that they all want. And so it's like that's the balance. And I'm not a huge fan of public life at all. You know, it's still pretty weird to me,
Yeah.
because I still think I have oftentimes more of a negative viewpoint of who I am. It's what most high achievers, if you get into their true subconscious, they're achieving these great lengths because of running from something or trying to prove something. And so that still comes out oftentimes when I'm dealing with the public, because the public puts you up on the pedestal, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to achieve what they're saying, and it's like, wait a minute, that can't be it. Like, and so I find myself just trying to stay grounded in all of it. You know, especially like at our Aspire tour, I go out in the crowd. I don't isolate myself from the people. I try to answer all my DMs. You know, it's like I do things to try to stay, because I think to the degree that you like start pulling away from being approachable, it's like seeding into that ego, that
Yeah.
thing that's just not true. Like, and I think the celebrities and the people that I most admire are the ones that walk out in the crowd, don't care if they get mobbed, they get mobbed. They don't, you know, like they just always have something to give. They're not worried about people's perception of them. And that's who I want to be. I mean, that's been a crazy journey for the last 2.5 years, to go from essentially anonymity, just running my companies, to like now being on stages and social and podcasts and all this stuff, is like, it's still something that I struggle with, but I think it's an evolution in who Eddie is. Like, I think it's a massive learning curve for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's you'd be doing a disservice if you weren't, in a sense, but also there's also that aspect for you, because there's some times where I don't want to be on social media ever again. And then there's other times where like I'm ready to record 10 podcasts in a day. And so I
Right.
think it's one of those things that are difficult to juggle with, because it's one of those things that you just get so caught up in, for sure. I'm curious for you, is there a skill that you wish you developed earlier?
hmm Yeah. I am typically tied more to pragmatic outputs in my life, so more data driven, functional things. I wish I would have developed more creativity. I think the balance of the form and function are important. And so while I play a little bit of guitar, I, would have loved to master the piano. It's like I sang in college. I also played basketball. So it's like I wish I would have kept on the path of, while I was building all this business skill and kind of the pragmatism of like data and information and function. I would have always, tried to master form as well. To me, creativity is such a great complement to the functionality of business, that I feel like I'd be more well-rounded had I given myself to more. But I will tell you that my business partner, Andrew, he's crazy. He's creative. He's kind of a wild man. And, I have found ways to put those people into my life,
Yeah.
so that I'm not lacking. But it is something that I wish I would have given myself to. And I find myself giving myself to more creative things today, because I do believe it's like the guy who skipped leg day for
Right.
6 years. It's like, I feel like that's who I am. It's like I've got this one part that's super developed and then a part that's
Mhm.
underdeveloped.
Yeah, I think that's one of the difficult things of being a type A personality is like you said earlier, like we're always driven by this, I guess, insecurity, lack, drive for significance, and we have this sense of, if I do anything that doesn't have like a revenue generating activity or something that is like moving me towards like my highest good, it's not productive. And I've done really a lot last year and this year, prioritized more of the, how do I want to feel about myself rather than how am I perceived by other people? And I think that that's a value that we have to choose for ourselves, but it takes a long time for people to choose. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that it works that way, but I think it's valuable. Like you can choose to do that now, and just because it wasn't a priority before,
Yeah.
it's cool to be a priority now. Worry and hurry are things that I've heard you speak about. I've never heard them associated together, in the sense that they hold most people back. And I'm curious for you. We were talking about it earlier, 76 companies, 86 at one point. You have probably 20, 30 now. You're doing a lot of different things and still doing so many things in the back end of the company and outside of it. How do you compartmentalize? How do you not let worry and hurry overwhelm you and take over your life?
Sure. Yeah, I think you have to put worry into a box that you manage. Worry is typically, a belief in something that will never come true. I've heard
Mhm.
so many stats about the percentage of things that you worry about that don't ever come true. And so it's just a horrible use of our time. And so I compartmentalize worry. I think about it pragmatically, like, does it serve me? Does it not serve me? And the other thing too is I also believe in providence. I believe that there are certain things that happen in life that, whether I push them or whether I pull them, they just happen when they happen.
Mhm.
And so I don't necessarily worry about the timing of really anything. What I do is I worry about my performance, my output, my team's performance, their output. And if things happen, they happen. And so I kind of leave it into this kind of like structure of providence of like, if it's going to, it's going to. I'm going to put myself in a position to take advantage of it when it does, but I'm not going to force anything. And so I love the quote, that, and I think it was President Kennedy that said, you always walk through crowds slowly, right? Like, it's like when you're walking through a crowd, it's like, enjoy the moment. Don't just speed through it and move without intention. And so I find myself, the whole world, it's funny, like, and I've had so many people in my space that are close to me say this about me, and I think it's intentional. They'll say everyone else is moving at 150 miles an hour in your world, like everybody's running, and you're running at 85, you know, like, and I think that that's the sense of and the ethos that I want to put off. You know, it's like there is no hurry. Have you ever watched you know, I love sports. Have you ever watched a sports team that tries to play with the same intensity or tenacity of another team, and then they
Yep.
lose because they're not used to playing at that same level of intensity or tenacity or speed?
Mhm.
Um, I want to build a team that produces speed, that moves quickly, that's, you know, innovative, that, you know, is nimble. But I also don't want to push the boundaries of what they're capable of and possible. I don't want to break the machine on a daily basis. When you break the machine, you break the people. When you break the people, you lose trust. When you lose trust, right? Like there is no foundation to move forward on. And so that's my job as CEO, is to know my people, know my numbers, know the speed at which I can operate and push it, you know, as fast as I possibly can. So worry is compartmentalized. It doesn't serve me. When I feel it, I just put it in the box and deal with it as it comes. You know, and then when it comes to hurry, it's what I realize is success is oftentimes um, out of my control. I can only create the outputs that gain me success, but I can't ever really dictate when that success is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, that trust is something that I think it takes a I mean, everyone goes through it at times where they trust less and they have that less faith in life. But a mindset I've taken on a lot recently is everything is unfolding exactly how it's supposed to, and I can do what I can do. But outside of what I can do, I can't do anything outside of that.
Yeah.
How has faith really helped you develop in your life, your career?
Faith is a big part of who I am. I grew up in a faith-based household, and to some degree rejected it for a while, just because it really wasn't my faith. It was really the faith of my parents.
Mm,
And for me, I am a firm believer in there is a God, that I was created for something, that I fit into His plan, that it's not necessarily my plan. And in that, there's a lot of confidence in believing in some higher power that has some greater purpose, that has care and love for me, that wants me to achieve the things that I was created for. In doing that, if I can kind of stay in that place, and that's where faith really like has a massive impact on me, because then I'm not constantly pushing to create something that I'm not know if I'm that I don't know if I'm capable of. For me, it's about walking in what I was created to do and trying to fulfill my highest and greatest purpose, and believing that it, to some degree, it was already thought about before I ever had to create it. In that, there's a lot of solace, there's a lot of confidence there. And so because I have that baseline, that belief system, therefore it's like it takes a lot of the pressure off. You know, it's
yeah,
like, now I want to live under pressure. Like I want to create pressure, not false pressure, but real pressure, in that I want to live at my highest and greatest use. I want to be a great steward of my time. I want to produce what I was called and created to produce. So faith, because of that construct, gives me a very clear direction and an operating system that then I operate by, which I believe is what has given me all of the success that I have.
would you say recently that drive and core values matter more than experience when it comes to hiring people on your team?
Mhm.
And when I heard that, I absolutely loved it because I think a lot of companies don't have that perspective because they think someone needs to have experience to be able to provide value. And I think that the right people are the people that don't have any experience because they come in naive and wanting to show up and wanting to learn. What are the core traits or skills that you look for people or look for in people?
As I look for people to bring into my organization, and I teach and train others to bring the right people into their organization, you know, it does start with drive. And I think that whatever people are driven towards, you have to get in front of it with their responsibilities and what you're trying to get them to achieve in your company. I find that if they're not driven towards the thing that you want them to achieve, oftentimes you find them, you know, kind of never giving all of their person to it. So we
Mm,
start with drive. I use a tool called Predictive Index to really help understand people's drives. Then we move into core values, and that's the alignment. For me, people have to align with my core values, or else we constantly clash. They're like magnets that are turned against each other. My core values are honesty, integrity, passion. I want truth, and I want to walk in truth. And whether it's good or it's bad, it goes back to that centeredness. Like I don't want to believe something about myself that's not true on either side, positive or negative. but I want to believe, I want to have a baseline of truth. And so I need people to live in truth. I need people to tell me when things are bad and tell me when we succeeded, and have a passion and desire for data and right decision making. Integrity is about doing the right thing when no one's looking. I'm not great at trying to instill, let's say, integrity or choices that have a high moral value in people. I want them to come with that. Like I
Right.
want that to be a skill set that they already possess, because I don't want to always worry about, should I place my trust in this person? I want to give trust freely. And typically integrity is the grease that allows that to happen, right? Like the functionality of that. And then lastly, passion. I want people that are pursuing something. I don't really care what they're pursuing, because I can anchor into it. I don't care if you like geology, coffee, whatever, ancient history. It doesn't matter to me what you're passionate about. But people with passion, similar to me, they go deeper. They figure things out. They're willing to learn and pursue. And so that's a big part of that. Experience really is I would say, a byproduct of that. If they don't possess those first two, then the experience doesn't matter. If they possess the first two and they bring experience, then they get to elevate probably quicker. But a lot of my team are people that we self-grow. If I build the right systems and processes, I can teach and train anyone anything. And if they're passionate and they have integrity, they're going to perfect their craft in whatever they're doing. So it's symbiotic in that, I don't force people into doing things they don't want to do. I don't try to just incentivize them to grind against the very nature of who they are. I'm trying to get into alignment with who they are, and then incentivize them to become everything that they were created to be. It's just a different way of thinking. And we hire, we fire, we promote, all of that based on that. And it served me well. I've employed, I think, close to 8 or 10,000 people in my career. And that served me very, very well, in that alignment with people usually allows them to stay with me for long periods of time and achieve with me together.
Yeah, it's the things you're looking for are innate in the things that are scalable, learnable, and you're able to really understand them deeper is something that you're able to do when they're at the company already. But a lot of those things like integrity and those kind of things, those kind of come innate. They're a little bit harder to change in people, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Looking back at your life now, is there a less obvious reason that you found success? We see the drive, we see the tenacity, we see the optimism. Is there something else that you realized later on in your life that you didn't realize earlier?
Sure. Yeah. A relationship with the traumas that we have in our life. I think trauma oftentimes drives our first success. It's a lack of belief in ourselves that gives us the first great motivator. And I think that, the big turning point for me was a few years ago, and I realized all that I've achieved is trying to prove something that I don't necessarily need to prove. If I change the paradigm and stop trying to prove something, maybe I could achieve success or find the success that I want without the trauma or without, all the turmoil. That understanding, kind of like early days in our life, childhood, growing up, dealing with that at a younger age really serves people well, because they can get to the motive of why they do what they do, the operating system that they operate within, which is truly their subconscious. That understanding of the subconscious and the conscious mind, diving into it, working at it, rewiring some of that, has been a game changer for me. In that today, I get to achieve success and I get to feel success. If you would ask Eddie in my 30s, you've achieved all the success, you've sold companies for $1 billion. Do you feel successful? I would say, or do you experience the success? I would have said, no. I would have not even probably talked about the achievements I already had, because I'd already focused on the new ones. Like I didn't care about the old ones. It was just this endless pursuit. Now, in understanding who I am, what I was doing, why I was trying to achieve it, really has made a massive, massive difference in my life.
It's incredible. Feeling successful and being successful are two separate things, and I think we're just looking to be and being seen as successful rather than actually feel it ourselves. And
Correct.
that's an amazing thing to learn. That's for sure. There's one last question I ask every guest. My question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
The belief that I'm currently unlearning is that I believed that only certain types of people could have the highest level of success. And what I've realized is people can, like I had this kind of like mindset of like, you have to be a high achiever, you have to have high drive, you have to have high attention to detail, you have to like add this like criteria.
Yeah.
And so I would just like kind of like, pinpoint the people like, okay, they could be successful, they could be successful. And I would align myself with them. And it was just a bunch of me's in the room. Right. And what I realized is, while you can be successful, oftentimes success is so, success is really about having more tomorrow than I had today while not diminishing my output or needs of today, right? Like it's this, that's what like wealth and success are, right? Like it's not a numerical dollar, it's not a car, it's not a house, it's not a vacation. It's about this like exponential output of your life. And so what I realized is there are other people, different types of people that are finding it, and they're finding it with more joy because they actually are different than who I am. And what I'm studying is the people that are the most, let's say, unusually successful people on the planet. The people that you would never expect to have success, and what it took to have them. Because I usually just have this like box, like, okay, I understand why Elon's successful. I understand why Cuban's successful. I understand why O'Leary's successful. And it's like, but why is, and then it's just like start randomly naming the other people in the world that are successful that aren't in that box. And it's really fascinating to me because success is not tied to a dollar. Success is typically tied to the experience you have and the exponential output of your life, and the experience that others have in your growth. And success, is also a very, very broad term. And so instead of me overlaying what I believe to be successful on someone, what I'm trying to do is experience what they believe to be success through their eyes and through their lens, and understand that in their difference of who I am, I might be able to experience that as well. And so it's just an expanding belief system of who can be successful, what is success, and that's what I'm unlearning, right? Like that's the belief system that I'm trying to tear down. I think honestly, I've told this to a few people. I think at the end of my life, I'm going to give it all away, and I think I'm going to give it all away before it ever. Most people wait till their deathbed and then they just like disperse it.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to do is in my like 60s, I'm going to give it all away, and before I, like while I still need it, right? And then see if I can actually feel success while I still have basic needs. Because to me, that would be the fundamental test to determine, do I actually understand what success is?
That's going to be fun. That's going to be really fun to see. Man, this conversation has been incredible. You're doing so many amazing things. I'd love to have you on the pod again in the future. Of course, all your links will be in the show notes below, but is there anywhere you'd like to direct people?
I'm in a place right now where I'm still trying to answer all my DMs and be present. So hit me up on social. Love to help out and answer any questions that people have. Eddie Wilson Official at all the social channels.